Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Healing Space. I am Dr. Nicole Montero. I am so excited to be here with you, as usual, every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Healing Space, where we have amazing, life-changing, and necessary conversations. All right. So today, we're going to jump right in. I know people are going to pile in, and they can join when they get in. They can get in where they fit in. But I want to talk about this important topic of self-comparison. All right. Give me a thumbs up or something if you know what I'm talking about, right? We are in an age of social media and so many things where self-comparison happens so often. And it plagues a lot of people. It really burdens people because it upsets them. And we don't talk enough about it, right? And a lot of people end up feeling like they're not measuring up. So there's a lot of self-comparison. Yes, I see you there. So, let's talk about it. I like to explain, first of all, the why of something before we get into how to change it, right? So I want to talk a little bit about why we tend to compare ourselves to others. This happens so often. So many people that I talk to, whether it's coaching or therapy or just people that I know, have this thing where we are constantly scanning and looking at other people to compare and see how we measure up. So I want to tell you a little bit about why we do that. And my point for doing that is I don't want you to feel bad about it. What I hear from a lot of people is a lot of times they find themselves in this loop of comparing themselves to others, and then they feel bad about it because we're told we shouldn't do that we shouldn't care what other people think. Who cares? Don't look at other people. But somehow everyone's doing it. So part of what happens is when we tend to find ourselves doing the self-comparison, we beat ourselves up. So it's almost like a double whammy. So in some ways, what I want to tell you is when you start doing that, it's kind of normal. And I'm going to tell you for a few reasons why, right? I want to give you tips for how not to do it, but I want to tell you a little bit about why. It's kind of normal just because of who we are, right? Just because of who we are. As humans, we're social beings, right? That's part of how we have survived and how we do survive and thrive is we need connection. We need to be in social groups, in social settings, right? We're always kind of looking, and that was part of how we developed as humans. We're always looking all right, where's the group? Where do I fit in? Is there a group? Where's my group? Or am I an insider or an outsider? Right? We are not built or, created to live alone. So we survive off of being in groups. And part of doing that is wired in our brain, right? You guys know when stuff is wired in our brains, I like to tell you. It's wired in our brains in some ways to kind of always be looking and seeing how we measure up to see if we need to do some things to be more a part of the group, or are we at risk of not being in the group, right? And rejection from the group can be a very, very, it can feel traumatic, right? Think about it, right? We talk about heartbreak a lot. We talk about breaking up with our friends, but think about it when you find yourself out of your tribe, you don't feel like you fit in. You feel isolated, right? What are some of the feelings that come with that? It tends to be you feel sad. You might feel anxious. You might feel fearful, uncertainty about the future, right? So all of these feelings come when we are afraid of not being accepted. So in some ways, when we start comparing ourselves, it's about that part of us that doesn't even realize we're always looking for acceptance in some ways. Now, there are ways to overcome that or to use that in a way so that you're not sort of preoccupied with other people and feeling depressed and anxious and so forth. But you kind of have to know why we tend to do it in the first place. The second thing is because of where we are right now in this day and age, right? Like I said, how are you watching me? How are we doing this thing, right? It's on social media. And I was just telling a colleague that I love social media. I have connected with so many people, many of you who follow me, or we connect on different platforms, right? I think it's so powerful, especially because I connect with people literally all over the world, right? It's a tool that connects us. And what did I say? What's hardwired in our brain? We want to connect, right? But here's the thing about social media that you have to understand. It is a curated existence. It's a curated platform, whatever platform you're on. Even when you see the most authentic things that people are doing, it's curated, right? It's curated. That means there's specific things that it's creating a narrative or an image that the person showing it wants you to have access to. I have yet to see any social media where you see every single thing about that person. But when you're with yourself, what do you see? You see every single thing about yourself. So in some ways, you're comparing your whole self, good, bad, in between. What is it? Good, bad, ugly, and in between, to a curated or like a setup, a carefully displayed version of somebody else's reality. And that's just not realistic, you guys. That is not realistic, right? So when you don't see somebody else's day-to-day ins and outs, even if somebody else talks about the hardships that they're going through, you still don't see every single aspect, the way that you sit and live with everything that you go through. So with social media, you have to be very careful that you don't look at all the shiny bright objects that someone else is showing you, and you're looking at all of the parts of yourself, right? And what that does is it makes you start to not even recognize your own shiny, beautiful objects, right? You're looking at other people's and thinking, wow, their diamonds are shinier than mine. Meanwhile, you're diminishing and not paying attention to your own diamonds, so to speak, right? So that's one of the things you have to be so careful of, not idealizing people or putting them on a pedestal, right? What did we just see with celebrities, right? We tend to put them on these pedestals and think that they're not human. And then when they do very human things, we're shocked and outraged, right? It's because a lot of times we tend to put all of our hopes and expectations into somebody that has influence in society. And when we do that, what we do is we downplay or we diminish all of the things that we have to offer, or we compare it in a way that it's not a fair comparison. Okay? So remember that social media is powerful. It does a lot to connect us, and we have that desire. Look, the founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, he understood the human instinct in such a deep way. He knows that we love to connect. He knows that we like to share and talk about ourselves. And he knows that we also like to see what other people are doing. So that's what social media is right there, right? And so you want to be careful in this age of social media, number one, that you don't do the unfair comparisons of your whole life to somebody's curated whatever on social media. Secondly, you want to be careful that you don't diminish or downplay all of the positive things about you, the positive qualities about yourself, the things that you have going through for yourself, just because you're comparing it to somebody else's. Okay? So you want to be careful that you don't do that. The other thing is you want to curate your own social media experience, right? If you find yourself when you go on social media, if you're using it for what you want it, for positive things, you should not be feeling bad while you're on social media, or you shouldn't be feeling like persistently worse than when you're not on social media, right? And if you are, try to notice the things that you are starting to, that is making you feel a bit like you're not measuring up or you're not good enough, right? And you need to curate your social media experience so that you're following the things that are feeding and nourishing you. And it doesn't have to be all positive, right? It should be thought-provoking. It should be inspiring. It should be motivating. That's what I try to do with my social media, right? Sometimes I'm going to poke your bear a little bit because I feel like there's certain things that have to be said so that we can come to another level of awareness. But you want to curate it. You should walk away from your social media experience feeling a bit invigorated and inspired and motivated. You shouldn't be feeling deflated, like you're not defeated, like you're nothing, like everybody else's life is better. Okay. And if that's your experience, then you need to readjust how you use social media, perhaps the amount of time that you're on it, who you're following, what even your expectations are to get out of it, right? And I'm talking to you all as adults, right? If we're talking about teenagers and kids, that even needs, if you have kids, you need to make sure you monitor their social media use, because at that stage of where they are in developing it can be they're even more vulnerable than we are to like constantly comparing themselves to other people. Okay. So this whole self-comparison, like I said, is normal in some ways. We're hardwired to do it. But then we're in an age of social media where it's set up to make us compare more and share more, but want to share and want to get likes and then feel a certain way when we don't get the likes, right? It really triggers into certain parts of our brain. And so what we have to learn to do, like I said, is to curate our experience. We also need to readjust our expectations around social media and around interacting with other people. And we have to change our mindset so that we know just because somebody else is doing great. Like I have an amazing announcement that I'm about to put in my stories, right? Because I'm happy about it. I'm excited about it. But it's not meant to put somebody else down, right? And I feel like a lot of times we tend to feel like everything is a zero-sum game. Like it's like if so-and-so's doing good, that automatically means I'm doing bad, right? And we need to shift that mindset. There is enough good out in this world for all of us to partake in it. So we have to retrain ourselves that just because, a lot of times people will joke around like, girl, I'm jealous, and it's like, I don't like to speak those words because envy and jealousy, they can be natural emotions sometimes, but you don't want that to be a persistent state that you're in, because just because somebody else that you like or that you admire or that you follow is doing good things, it doesn't mean that you aren't. Your good might look different than their good. Your journey might be different than their journey, right? And it doesn't mean that you're not in a place of where your fruit is your harvest is gonna come maybe at a different time, at a different season. The key thing is to continue to focus on you and what you're doing versus thinking that there's a specific timeline. Okay? That has to be the most sort of self-destructive thing you could do, which is to think there's only one model or standard of success. There's only one timeline of when you have to get married, when you have to have kids, when you have to buy the house, now everybody's like they're having 6 and 7 and 8-figure businesses, when you should be an entrepreneur. There's all these expectations, but there's who said that is the timeline, right? We're living in a time in society where so many things are shifting. We have to be more willing to really learn to tap into ourselves and learn to trust ourselves and learn to honor our unique journey and timeline and our unique story. It's not going to look like everybody else's. I know mine didn't, and it doesn't, right? Ours is always going to be different. So we have to be in this time where we can really trust who we are and what we have to offer to the world, and not think that it has to look like this cookie cutter version like everybody else's, right? The other tip for like learning not to compare yourself is really making sure you grant yourself self-compassion, right? A lot of times, what do? We give compassion to everybody else, our friends, our family members, celebrities, people we don't know, but we often like give ourselves less compassion. There's a lot of times where we don't give ourselves as much compassion as we give other people. So if there are days when we're kind of feeling down, or we are comparing ourselves, or we're wondering, am I behind? Or why can't I get this right? Or I keep struggling with this thing. We need to just pause and be in that moment with gratitude, right? That's a huge tip, is expressing gratitude. Be in the moment in gratitude for what you have right now and where you are right now. And know that your steps are ordered, that your path is yours. In my belief system, it's been written. So you have to step into what is meant for you, right? And it's not going to look like everybody else. What I do believe is that what's meant for you and for me and for all of us is not to struggle with all of this sense of we're not good enough and we don't measure up and everybody else is better, right? When we start to feel those things, that's a signal to pause and reflect on it, tap into who we really are, right? When you start to see, you know how we talk about mindset demons? I call them the self-comparison demons. When they start to come out, oh, look at her handbag. Wow, her business is doing great. Oh, she's married and about to have kids. Oh, he's making a lot of money. Oh, they just got, they're an influencer. All of these things are things that are self-created, that we put in our mind to say that this is how we should measure each other. And really think about for yourself, what are your values that you think you want to measure yourself by? And if you're not quite where you want to be, I can tell you one thing that's not going to get you where you want to be, and that's beating yourself up mentally, right? Sometimes in order to fill that gap from where we are and where we know we want to be, we have to go deep and tap deep into ourselves to really get that motivation and inspiration. But when we beat ourselves up, that doesn't really motivate us, right? Let me know in the chat. When was the last time you felt excited to do something after you beat yourself up and told yourself you weren't good enough and everybody else is better, right? That doesn't work. What works is learning to give yourself compassion, learning how to believe in yourself, and learning to know that your journey is unique and it can't be compared to anybody else's, right? So look, you guys sometimes get me on here like I'm preaching almost, but I'm so passionate about this. So I want you, if this is something that you struggle with, DM me the word comparison or self-doubt, right? Let's talk about this. I have an ebook that goes deep into this. I have an upcoming masterclass. I have tools that can really help you to get out of this cycle of seeing yourself in a negative way when you start to compare yourself. And like I said, just to normalize it, we all go through it. We all go through periods of it. But the key is you don't want it to paralyze you to where you're feeling anxious and depressed and preoccupied so much with other people are doing and not honoring what you're doing and not believing that you can do, the thing that you dream of and that you really desire for yourself. Okay? I thank you all. This has been The Healing Space. This is every Monday night. I'm Dr. Nicole Montero. I come on here every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we have life-changing, inspiring conversations about topics that can really help us to change our lives. Okay? So thank you all for joining, and I will see you all next week. I'm going to go live in between this, but I'll definitely be here next Monday, 7 p.m., The Healing Space. Take care.